Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to make your own homegrown sprouts, jar sprouts. These ones specifically are alfalfa, and this would apply to just about any kind of sprout that you're going to do using a jar. These are peas, green peas. This is a mixed blend of alfalfa and several different seeds, but you can use it for almost any kind of seed that you want to do it. So you need a jar. You need a sprouting lid. There's many different varieties. This just happens to be a stainless steel kind. You don't need a measuring spoon, but if you want to get a tablespoon, this works great. And some purified water. This is the reverse osmosis and other magical things, the water that we have that comes out of one of our taps. And now we can get started. So you want to take your jar, empty jar, clean jar, just make sure it's clean, and your sprouting lid and whatever seed that you want to do, okay? So they're always going to start out dry. I keep mine in the refrigerator. I get mine typically from Mums for some of these seeds like alfalfas, things that are less common, but things like green peas, if you have a good source of bulk organic peas, that can be a good place to start. They may be cheaper, but otherwise Mums carries everything, and I really love supporting this company. They're a great Canadian company. I've been using them for probably about a decade. Okay, so you start with your jar, your seeds of choice. So for me, I'm going to be using the alfalfas, and then you're just going to literally put in, I would excuse the puppy in the background. Actually, I'm not going to do alfalfas because I already have that started here. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. We're going to pretend that this is alfalfa, just so I'm not starting more of the same one that I have. But you're going to take about, for me, and the amount that we consume in about 5 days, I'm going to take 2 tablespoons. 2 tablespoons. I guess sometimes we're around 3 tablespoons, but you can see how much that is there. Okay, so it's not a huge amount, but this really does expand. So I put, actually I'll do 3 because this is more like what we do, and then I'll have a better comparison. So this is how much, 3 tablespoons is what we typically consume. So if I'm going to grow sprouts for us and want it for about a week or so, then I'll put about 3 tablespoons in here, and that's consuming quite a lot of sprouts. And then at the end, once I am, actually let me back up. Next thing you do is you're going to pour that pure water on top of your sprouts, your seeds. You can put them in a sealed lid if you want, but the idea is just give it a swish around. You can do this in the regular sprouting lid as well, but if you're tend to be the type of person that spills, swish it around with the solid lid on. Then remove that, and then put this screened lid that is meant for sprouting and finish it nice and tightly like that. You're gonna let that basically sit on your counter for at least 8 hours, or you can also leave it overnight. So you can see here, basically we got about 1 centimeter worth of sprouts, or seeds if I was to measure this, in the bottom of the jar. And after sitting overnight, they expand to this much, which, I mean, we're talking about probably 2.5 inches. So they really swell up. So you wanna make sure you have a lot of water, and I know that they're different seeds, different colors, but they expand at about the same rate, these ones. So after sitting overnight, you're going to have seeds that are swollen. What also happens is the enzyme inhibitor, which is a protective layer around each seed, it's just part of nature. It's how plants prevent predators from eating them. And so what happens is it also is something that tends to disturb some people's bellies. I'm not sensitive to it, but it is something that people talk about. So the enzyme inhibitor ends up getting removed during the soaking process, which is part of also why we do it. But if that enzyme inhibitor is not removed and they're not soaked, germination doesn't happen. And so that's what a sprout is. It's a germinated seed. So soaking it after 8 hours, in this case, it's been overnight. Now when I swish it, I'm gonna have to actually use a knife and just remove it from the bottom, but you're gonna see there's like this yellowy kind of color to the water. That is part of the seed coating, and all of this just needs to be washed off. So once you've got it at this point, hold on, I'm gonna grab myself what do I got here? I'll use this. It's just a bottle cleaner. But now you swish it around, make sure you get all around the edges at the bottom. If you feel anything is sticking, just release it all. Put your screened lid back on, and give it a rinse. So you're literally going to pour this out into the sink, and then you're going to refill the jar, swish the seeds around with fresh water, dump it out, do that twice. So I'm going to do that right now. Pouring it once. Filling it up again. Swishing it for a second time. Dumping it out again. The finer seeds sometimes take a bit longer to drain, but once it's all drained, you're just like shaking. I don't know if you can see me doing this, but you're just shaking, 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 shaking. I'm going to bring over my towel to show you. So when you're done shaking, there's not much that's coming out, like maybe a drop or two. That's fine, okay? So once it's about at that point of strainedness, that's a word, you're complete. Now, you're gonna see online that people are selling these things, these racks that you hold your seeds on an angle to drain them all out. I don't do that. I don't see the need for it at all. Nothing is going to go wrong with your seeds if they're sitting, if there's a few drops of water at the bottom. I have my seeds sitting on the counter. So everything just sits on the counter when it's done, and that's where I store them, and that's where I rinse them. And so I recommend keep it simple. Do the same thing for yourself. You really don't need to have extra gadgets around. But if you want to, it's kind of nice. They look decorative and you may enjoy it. Bottom line, once it's been rinsed twice, now you simply leave it on the counter. So now it sits here. Let's say it's morning time, which it's not far from morning. You would leave this. They have already been awakened. They are now starting to germinate. And so they will be doing this until this evening, when I will do the same thing, rinse it again, swish it around, drain all the water out once or twice, and then let it sit on the counter. You're gonna do this every day, twice a day, rinsing once in the morning, draining, put it on the counter. Then in the evening, fill it with water, rinse it, drain it, put it on the counter for probably about 4 to 6 days, depending on how mature you like your seeds to, your sprouts to be. So this is, and once they're at the desired growth, then you put them in the fridge. So these here are probably very similar to what you see in the grocery store if you're to buy sprouts, fresh sprouts. And this is after, I would say, probably about 4 days, and then probably another 4 days or so sitting in the fridge. So putting them in the fridge when they're done doesn't stop the growth process, but it does slow it down considerably. The temperature, cold temperature, just slows down the growth of most things. So that's where you'll put your sprouts after they're done. And then even while they're in the fridge, you still do want to rinse them slightly. So maybe every other day you would take them out of the fridge, give them a rinse in the same way. So you keep the lid on, fill it with water, give them a swish. And you may need to do it twice because sometimes there is residue that starts to build up and you just want to rinse that off. And then, whoop, this one's still got water in it. And then do the same thing, shake it off into your sink, pretending this is a sink. Give it a wipe, because normally when you tilt the jar back up, it tends to drip from under the seal. Give it a little wipe, and then it goes back into the fridge. So this works for alfalfa seeds, okay? It works for mixed blends that you can buy online. You can even make yourself once you start experimenting with more. Like I said, these peas, same thing. Leave them on the counter, rinsing twice a day, each day, until they are considered done by your standards. And then you pop them into the fridge and then top them with, eat them on their own or put them on top of your salads, on top of breakfast, whatever you like. And you're gonna have your most delicious homegrown sprouts that are so nutritious, super high vibe. Sorry you can't see my face. And let us know how it made out for you. Okay, talk to you soon.